And a couple weeks go by, and I ended up moving out of the camper, and I had sold like a big contract, like a year long deal for a couple $1,000s, like. And the average ticket of people would buy like $200 memberships per month. So when I came in with like this $8,000, $10,000 thing, it was just like I'd never done anything like that before. And all glory to the big man upstairs because it was very much by faith and him doing it because I did not know how that
Was
happened.
that the one you were telling me about that was kind of random? You met somebody in a bar or something?
Literally, yeah. I saw on Instagram when I was in college that this guy named Jesse Itzler, he owns the Atlanta Hawks basketball team. He said if you're a young guy, he said when he was 23, he picked a local restaurant and that became his stomping grounds. And so then you go in there and you tip $100 to a server, and then everyone in there will love you and you'll get business. So it actually was out of frustration. We were bringing all these people, and I felt a lot of pressure because the sales numbers weren't supporting the revenue for payroll. And so I was like, okay, I need to go sell. Like it was sort of like game on.
Yeah.
And I remembered that video kept replaying in my mind of him talking about it. So then I went and did it. And I went to Farina's and Lafayette Village in North Raleigh, and um, I tipped a hundred bucks on a credit card that I did not have the money for, but I did it anyway. Um, and the bar was full of people except the seat next to me was empty. And right as I sit down, I literally had a thought like, what am I going to do? 2 minutes later, the owner comes up, touches me on the arm, and he says, young man, this is a regular named Ken, and he would like to talk to you. Can he have dinner with you? And he sits next to me, and I talk with him for 4 hours. And he ends up inviting me to church the next day, and I end up going with him. And then after that, he comes into the gym, and he spends quite a big purchase
Right.
for these sessions to help him with a health problem. And it was awesome. And he got the results, um, that kind of reshaped, sort of like crushed every belief that was in my head about what was possible and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I went into the office to celebrate. And at the time, my old boss was bringing on 11 people at once. And it was like within like 3 week period. He was trying to hire a lot of people to prep for the new space. We were
Right.
about to make the jump. And I go in there wanting to celebrate, and it just was very much a um, conversation that maybe a coach would have under extreme pressure with a player who was a good player, but he was trying to squeeze.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like maybe the Kobe Bryant Mamba mentality approach that was very much like the coaching style of being tough on you to get the best out of you, kind of thing. And he dropped a lot of stuff on me, like, full of crap. You're not worth it. You're not worth any of the money that I've given you already. Like, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments that I knew it wasn't who he was. It wasn't who I was. There was a lot of stress, a lot of chaos. And it just felt like a story. Like it felt scripted to me.
Gotcha.
You know what I
Like
mean?
where are the cameras?
Right. And so I stood.
Is Ashton Kutcher around here?
Literally, that's what it felt like.
Right.
And so I stood up, and I was just like, we both stood up in his office. There was no one else there, and he just goes, "What are you going to go do?" And I said, "I'm going to sell." I should have said I'm going to leave. Like this, I don't need this. Yeah, but it felt scripted. It felt like it was. I don't know. It felt like, it sounds crazy. It felt like destiny. It felt like it was meant to happen. And so I tell him I'm going to sell, and he goes, "Okay, how much?" And I said $1,000. I just sold like an $8,000 contract before, and my confidence was really high. My ego was through the roof at the time, so I was like, "Yeah." And so then he was like, "Okay, and you need 5 people." And I said, "Okay." And he goes, "And if you don't do it by Friday, then you're fired." And it was Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m.
What?
So I go home, and my instinct was like, I need to go, or I had a feeling like because I was stressed and anxious, I was like, I need to go sell right now. But I had a sense like just go home and like just
take it easy for a minute.
Yeah. So I went home, saw my family. They didn't know what to say. Hugged my mom, my dad. They just hugged me. My mom was like furious, livid, that mama bear instinct.
Oh, yeah.
And then my sister was like, I told you should have gotten out of there when you had the chance. And then I didn't know what to do because no one was being like, you could do it, Adam. Like it was all just very much like, I was very caught in that, like, I need to do this. Like, I need to get this. I need to achieve this, And I didn't even want to consider what would happen if I didn't, because I literally felt like my survival was tied to the success of this.
Wow.
And so I text my coach that I was working with that we talked about last week, and he goes, "All right, let's get on the phone." Get on the phone, and we got on the phone. And I was expecting him. I had paid all this money on credit cards to pay this guy to help coach me over the years, and I was expecting him to give me these tactical answers. And he just goes, "You need to pray."
That was it.
He said, "You need to pray."
Wow.
I was mad, Gordon. I was like, "You're telling me I need to pray, and I've given you all this money, and I'm under the gun, and all this stuff's happening, and you're telling me that you don't have the
Wasn't
answer?"
this all building to this moment where you're supposed to help me?
Bro, literally, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And he just gives it to God. And in that moment, we prayed, and afterwards, I felt all the anxiety go away instantly. And I had sort of like a switch in my brain being like, well, what if I could pull this off? Like, what if it could happen? At the time, I wasn't saying what if God could do it. Like, what if it in the moment could happen? But I was like, no, what if I could do it?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that was a gift, like the faith to look and be like, wow. And I go out the next day, didn't know what I was going to do, but I just started going to like coffee shops and started going where people were like very chaotic selling, like trying to go to people on the street and like just literally running around town, going door to door in businesses.
Right.
And I ended up going back to the restaurant at Farina's, and I sit down at the bar again, and I'm buying people wine, using credit again, like
Balling out.
very much trying to portray an image to impress people, to accomplish this thing, to impress more people, you know. And so
Build a Ponzi scheme.
not necessarily
I'm
a
just
Ponzi
kidding.
scheme. It was more just like I was trying to
Put on an air.
Yeah, live up to this thing and
Mm-hmm.
get it done, because I was under so much pressure, and I just didn't know what to do. And so I go back to the restaurant and buying people wine and stuff, trying to convince them to come, and no one said anything. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna get fired. And I had the thought. I started walking out the door. The owner comes up and touches me again, and he's like, "Young man, we heard about what you did for Ken. Can you come talk to my wife?" My hand was about to hit the door. Like I was walking by the hostess stand, and I talked to the wife. They sat right at the front door. These are amazing people. It was such a blessing. And they looked at me and they go, "We have vertigo. Can you help us with one of your services?" And I said, "Yeah." And the words just started coming, flowing out of my mouth. And next thing I know, they're in there the next morning, and they spent $4,000.
Dang.
And it was just like
It happened for you.
yeah. And so
you overcame that obstacle.
that was the biggest moment where it basically God was like, "I'm the power here. Like I'm the one doing this." You know?
But you were the one in that restaurant.
Yes. So it took like he reaches out, I gotta reach out too. You know, it's not failure to me wasn't an option in that moment. And the problem was though, Gordon, is the next day I go back and I ended up getting the 5 people in, etc. The next day I go back and I get a text, "Did you do it?" And I sent yes, and I sent the number, and he goes, "Okay, what is it for next week?" And so it became a weekly battle because the goal was to raise the money to pay the people to get it was like a race to the finish to get the building open. And long story short, 12 weeks go by. A lot of people came in by faith. Like it would just be crazy. The people who would talk to me, because I was on fire. I started doubling down on the restaurants because I was like, that's where the people are. I'm gonna go there, schmooze them, bring them in. Wasn't necessarily living the best standard that I could in my life. I was drinking a lot. I would get behind the wheel sometimes too. Like
Gotcha.
I was just
Not
trying
being
to,
your best self.
yeah. And so a lot of people came in and paid money, and I'm so grateful for all those people. And they did get results. Like they would lose weight, they would heal arthritis, they would all do these things. So we were making a good impact, and that really saved me because it was like, even in this horrible situation, like these people are still being helped.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, weeks go by, and it was a Saturday night, and I'm like going out by myself at this point because I was kind of in a dark place, and I was just like, I guess this is my life. And I was drinking, and one night I had drank like 8 beers, and I was in a car, and I go driving home, and I go through a checkpoint.
Yikes.
I was